All right, diving in today, we're taking a deep look at the world of startups, building something that lasts, something truly valuable. And our guide for this deep dive is, well, Peter Thiel's Zero to One. It's a book that's become a bit of like a roadmap for those wanting to make a real dent in the business universe.
And Thiel's not just some armchair theorist.
Right. He's been in the trenches.
Exactly. His time with PayPal, Palantir, even his early investments like with Facebook give his ideas some serious weight.
You wanted to understand what makes a business stand out, right? Like what truly makes it unique. Well, Thiel, he throws out this idea right off the bat about two types of progress. You got your horizontal and your vertical.
He says we often get tricked. We think just copying what works is progress, real progress.
So just mimicking.
Yeah, that's what he calls horizontal progress. Like,
Right.
picture globalization. You're taking a successful thing and replicating it somewhere else, basically going from, one to N.
Taking a business model that works in, say, the US and just plopping it down in Europe and hoping for the same result.
Exactly. It's all about copying. But with vertical progress, now that's where it gets exciting. Thiel calls it 0 to 1.
Ah, 0 to 1.
It's creating something entirely new, something nobody's ever seen before. That's where the true value is.
The kind of progress that actually pushes the world forward. And for Thiel, the key to unlocking this 0 to 1 is technology.
But he's not just talking about the newest iPhone or whatever.
Right. He's got a wider view, right?
Much broader. For him, it's about finding a better way to do things, period. Any kind of thing. He even challenges the whole idea that, developed countries, we've hit our peak, like no more progress to be made. Thiel, he thinks there's this whole universe of 0 to 1 opportunities still out there.
So there's still hope for us. Phew. Okay, good. Now, he uses the dot-com bubble, that whole roller coaster back in the 90s, to teach us some things about progress, about innovation, and about what happens when we all get a bit too blinded by the hype.
It's a perfect example. A lot of people walked away from that thinking they learned the right lessons. But Thiel, he argues that a lot of those lessons, they were dead wrong.
Dead wrong. Okay, I'm curious, what did they miss?
Well, one of the big takeaways was that companies should stick to small, incremental advances.
Like baby steps, basically.
Right, just improving existing things little by little. But Thiel says that kind of thinking, it'll never lead to those big breakthroughs. You got to be bold, take risks to create something truly groundbreaking.
So playing it safe is actually the riskiest move. That's pretty
Because
counterintuitive.
it is. Another lesson was to stay lean, keep costs down no matter what. And while being careful with resources is smart, Thiel points out that having a plan, even a bad one, is way better than just winging it.
So have a direction, even if it needs some tweaking along the way.
Exactly. And then, well, here's where things get controversial. After the dot-com bust, a lot of people thought laser focus on competition was the key. But Thiel, he disagrees completely. He argues that competition, it's actually harmful, and the real goal should be to create a monopoly.
Wait, hold on. Isn't competition supposed to be a good thing? Like, that's what we're always told, right?
Classic economic theory, right? But Thiel challenges that. He's not talking about those big bad monopolies that squash the little guy. He's talking about companies that dominate because they offer something so unique, so valuable that there's simply no real competitor. Think Google.
Google, yeah, they're the undisputed champs of search, and for good reason.
Right. Thiel says successful businesses, in a sense, they all become monopolies. They create something no one else can copy.
Because constant competition just leads to tiny improvements, price wars, and ultimately, everyone loses.
Yep.
Profits get killed, and real innovation gets stifled.
You got it. Instead of trying to be just slightly better than the rest, you should be aiming to create something so different, so valuable that you're in a league of your own.
A league of your own. I like that. So it's about being a category of one, but how do you even get there?
Well, Thiel actually uses and this might sound a little strange, he uses a Shakespearean metaphor to illustrate this point. He compares the rivalry between Microsoft and Google to the feuding families in Romeo and Juliet.
Okay, now that's a twist. Shakespeare in business.
Yeah, right. But it's clever. Think about it. Just like the Montagues and Capulets, those companies got so caught up in fighting each other that they lost sight of the big picture. They missed the chance to create something truly game-changing because they were too busy squabbling.
So distracted by the fight that they missed the real opportunities.
Precisely. And this leads to another one of Thiel's ideas that, well, it goes against the grain. Last mover advantage.
Last mover advantage. Okay, I'm listening.
He's saying sometimes it's actually better to enter a market after that initial crazy competition has died down. That's when you can really build something lasting, something defensible.
So patience is key. even in the startup world where everything feels so fast-paced.
In Thiel's world, absolutely. Look at Amazon. They started by dominating online books, a very specific niche, and then they became the everything store. Patience, strategy, they built one of the most incredible businesses we've ever seen.
It's starting to click for me, this whole big picture. But how do you actually build one of these monopoly businesses in the real world? Like, is there a formula?
Well, Thiel, he lays out some key principles. First, focus. Don't try to be everything to everyone right away. Find a niche, a specific group of customers with a need you can solve better than anyone else. Dominate that niche, then you can start thinking about expanding.
Like PayPal did with eBay's power sellers. They built their empire from there.
Exactly. Another principle. Avoid disruption. Don't try to take down the big guy right away. Focus on what's missing, what's not being met. Create something new and valuable that fills a gap, and customers will come naturally without having to wage war.
Find that blue ocean, that open water where you can sail without constantly battling.
Exactly. But to choose the right niche, you have to understand this thing called the power law.
The power law. Sounds a bit intimidating.
Don't worry, it applies to way more than just business. It basically means that a small number of things create most of the results, like a handful of companies or even investments. They end up creating almost all the value.
So it's like the 80-20 rule, but way more extreme.
You could say that. In venture capital, for instance, one investment might outperform everything else in the entire fund combined.
So you got to find those rare opportunities that have that potential to just explode in value.
Mhm.
Then go all in on them.
Exactly. And Thiel, he says this power law, it should influence how you think about your career too. Finding an exceptional company that's about to grow rapidly, that's more important than your specific role within that company.
So it's better to be a small fish in a pond that's about to become an ocean.
Exactly. Be a part of something that could change the world, even if you're not in the spotlight. That kind of thinking leads to far greater rewards than playing it safe in an established company.
Okay, a lot to process there. But Thiel doesn't stop there. He goes into this idea of secrets and how they play a role in building a successful business.
He believes great companies are built on secrets. Not, like hidden conspiracies, but open, unsuspected secrets about how the world works. A whole layer of knowledge most people just miss.
This is interesting. What kind of secrets are we talking about?
Well, Thiel sees two kinds. You got natural secrets and human secrets. Natural secrets are things we just don't understand yet about the world, like the mysteries of physics or how the human brain really works.
And then the human secrets. What are those?
Those are things people don't get about themselves, about their own behavior, their needs, or things they deliberately keep hidden. Like, think about the early days of companies like Airbnb or Uber. They tapped into those human secrets, those underutilized resources or needs that no one else was really paying attention to.
Like Airbnb realizing people had rooms they could rent out, and Uber connecting those needing rides with drivers who had empty seats. They both used something that was already there, just hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. They unlocked a secret, and it changed the game completely.
Okay, I'm starting to get this whole secrets thing. But how do you even begin to find these secrets, whether they're natural or human? Is it just luck, or is there a way to go about it?
Thiel suggests asking contrarian questions.
Contrarian questions.
You got to challenge those assumptions that everyone takes for granted. Look for the gaps in the conventional wisdom. Ask yourself, what are people not allowed to talk about? What's taboo? What's right there in front of everyone that they're just missing?
Be a rebel. Question everything. I like it.
That's the spirit. Don't be afraid to go into fields that everyone else is ignoring, places with a ton of potential, but no one's really exploring them. Think about, it's kind of like searching for buried treasure, those secrets. Not always obvious where to look or even what you're looking for, but the payoff, man, it could be huge.
So what kind of secrets are we actually talking about? Where do you even start?
Well, Thiel, he breaks it down into two main types: natural secrets and then human secrets. Natural secrets, those are things we simply don't understand yet about the world around us, like the laws of physics, how the human brain really works, all that. We've come a long way, but there's still so much we don't know.
Yeah, those natural secrets feel kind of, I don't know, intimidating almost.
Ugh.
Like they're reserved for like super geniuses, you know?
Right.
But what about those human secrets? Those seem a bit more, I don't know, accessible. Like maybe we could all stumble upon one if we're lucky.
You're right, they do feel more within reach. Human secrets, it's stuff people don't fully understand about themselves, their own behavior, their needs, or even things they try to keep hidden on purpose. Like, think about those early days of companies like, I don't know, Airbnb or Uber.
Okay, yeah.
They tapped into those human secrets. They found those underutilized resources or needs that nobody else was really seeing.
Airbnb, they saw people had those extra rooms, apartments they could rent out. And Uber, they connected people needing rides with those who had empty seats in their cars. Both of them, they used something that was already there,
Yeah.
just hidden in plain sight. I mean, that's brilliant.
Totally. They unlocked a secret and boom, they changed the world.
That makes sense. But how do you actually find these secrets, both those natural ones and the human ones? Is it just luck? Or is there a way to, I don't know, a process for uncovering them?
Thiel, he says one way, one of the best ways, is to ask what he calls contrarian questions. Basically, challenge those assumptions that everyone else just takes for granted.
Okay.
Look for those cracks in conventional wisdom.
Like those things no one questions anymore.
Yeah. Ask yourself, what are people not talking about? What's taboo? What's right there, obvious to everyone, but somehow they're missing it?
Be a rebel, a questioner. Don't just accept things at face value.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to dive into those areas everyone else is ignoring. Fields with a ton of potential, but for some reason, people aren't paying attention to them.
Okay, I'm with you.
Think about what Thiel said about the power law. A small number of things, they create most of the value. So if you can find those overlooked areas, those hidden gems, you might be onto something huge.
It's about finding those diamonds in the rough, right?
Exactly. But then, let's say you do find a secret, something you truly believe could change the game. What do you do then? Do you shout it from the rooftops, or do you keep it quiet, under wraps?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, part of me wants to share it with everyone, right?
Yeah.
Make a big splash, maybe even help make the world a better place by sharing this amazing discovery. But then there's that other voice, the one saying, hold on, protect this. This is valuable. This could be the foundation of something incredible.
It's a tough call, for sure. Thiel, he gets that. It's this balance between, like, idealism and being practical. He says some secrets are more risky to reveal than others. It really depends. But he does say, build a company culture that values secrecy, discretion.
So surround yourself with people you trust, people who get the mission, who know how to keep things quiet. Build an environment where that sensitive information is protected.
A team you can trust, a team that gets it.
Hmm.
Now, talking about teams, let's circle back to something we talked about before, that company culture. Thiel seems to think it's like the most important ingredient for success, and I'm starting to understand why.
He says it's like the DNA of a company, that culture.
Right, it's what makes it unique, what sets it apart from everyone else, and ultimately whether it succeeds or not.
He makes this, I don't know, it might sound strange, this comparison between a high-performing team and, well, a cult. But he makes a really important distinction.
I remember reading that and thinking, wait, a cult? That's taking it a bit far, isn't it? But then as I read on, I got it. He's not talking about those dangerous, manipulative cults. He's using it as an analogy for the level of, like, dedication, shared belief, unwavering commitment, the kind of stuff that can really take a startup to the next level.
Yeah, like a cult, those really successful startups, they often have this strong sense of mission, this tight-knit community, this willingness to challenge norms and go against the grain.
Right. But the crucial difference is that cults, they're usually fanatically devoted to something that's fundamentally wrong. Successful startups, they're fanatically right about something that everyone else has missed.
They've found a truth, a secret, an opportunity, something that no one else sees.
And they'll work tirelessly together, often against all odds, to bring that vision to life.
I'm seeing how that, I don't know what to call it, that cult-like mentality, but in the right context, can be a huge advantage for a startup. But it can't just be about blind faith, can it? You need structure, processes, the right people in place to make that energy actually productive.
Absolutely. Thiel, he stresses how important it is to pay attention to hiring, onboarding, team dynamics, all that. You can't just throw a bunch of smart people together and hope for the best. You got to build an environment where people can work together, communicate, share a common goal.
He says, hire people who aren't just skilled, but who also fit with the company's values. He calls them conspirators, people who are actually excited about the mission and who are ready to work together to build something great.
And he's big on transparency, open communication. He thinks the best way to build a solid culture is to be upfront about goals, make sure everyone knows why their work matters, create that sense of ownership within the team.
So it's not just, here's your task, go do it. It's, here's how your work fits into the big picture. Here's how you're making a difference.
Exactly. Empower people to own their work, make them feel like they're part of something bigger. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about how Thiel sees sales. He says it's an area that's, well, often undervalued, especially in the tech world.
He likes shaking things up a bit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Always challenging the norm.
Oh, absolutely. And I think he's right. When I started out in tech, there was almost this, I don't know, snobby attitude towards sales.
Like it was beneath them.
Totally. Seen as something like less important than the engineers, the product people. It was all about building the coolest, newest thing. And then people would just magically show up and buy it.
Build it and they will come. Yeah.
Exactly. But Thiel, he calls that out. He says it's a naive assumption, a dangerous one even. He says even the best product in the world, it won't sell itself. You got to convince people they need it, and that's where sales comes in.
It's not just about the product. It's about getting it into the right hands, telling the right story, persuading people to buy into the vision.
You got it. And he says those skills are valuable everywhere, not just in business. Anytime you need to influence someone, convince them of something. Now, how to actually become a better salesperson.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Well, he breaks it down into 4 categories: complex sales, personal sales, distribution deals, and then marketing and advertising. He says each one needs a slightly different approach, a different set of skills.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's start with complex sales. What does that look like?
Complex sales, it usually involves selling those expensive products or services to a small number of, sophisticated buyers, like think enterprise software, financial services, high-end consulting, that kind of thing.
So it's not just a quick pitch and a handshake. It's about building those long-term relationships, really understanding the customer's needs, creating solutions that are tailored just for them.
Right. You're a trusted advisor, not just a salesperson making a transaction.
Got it. What about those personal sales then? How are they different?
Personal sales, that's more about selling to individual people, usually at a lower price. Think door-to-door, retail, online sales, things like that.
So being able to connect on a personal level, build that rapport, make people comfortable enough to buy from you.
Yeah, being relatable, approachable, trustworthy. You have to figure out what makes your customers tick and tailor your message accordingly.
Okay. What about those distribution deals? How do they work?
Distribution deals, it's all about partnering up with other companies to reach more people. It could be licensing your tech, working with retailers, or even collaborating with businesses that offer, products or services that complement yours.
So you're using other people's networks, their resources, to get your product in front of more eyeballs.
Exactly. It can be super effective for growing your business, especially if you don't have the means to build your own sales team or distribution channels, from the ground up.
Makes sense. And then there's marketing and advertising. What does Thiel say about that?
He says marketing and advertising can work, especially for building awareness and creating demand. But he also warns against relying on it too much, especially for startups in those early stages.
Focus on the product, find those distribution channels, and then worry about marketing, right?
He sees advertising as something that can, distract you from the core. He says it's often better to build a strong brand through word of mouth, those customer referrals.
Create a product that people rave about. Let the customers do the talking for you.
Exactly. Another big part of sales, and Thiel really emphasizes this, is understanding what he calls customer lifetime value.
Customer lifetime value. Okay, not familiar with that one. What is that?
Basically, it's trying to predict how much money a customer will spend with your business over, their entire time as a customer.
So it's not just about that one-time sale. It's about building that long-term relationship, getting the most value out of that customer over time.
Exactly. And Thiel, he says this is especially crucial for startups because they often don't have a ton of resources, right? They got to make sure they're attracting those customers who are going to be profitable in the long run.
Yeah, it's better to have 100 customers who love what you do and stick around for years than, 1,000 customers who just buy once and disappear.
That's what he's saying. Build a loyal base, not just chase those quick sales. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about how Thiel sees the clean tech bubble. He's a bit critical of all the hype and investment that went into clean energy back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. What does he think went wrong? Were those clean tech companies just, I don't know, too idealistic?
He sees it as a cautionary tale. What happens when good intentions and excitement get ahead of reality.
Okay.
He points to a few things. First, a lack of those big technological breakthroughs. A lot of these clean tech companies, they overpromised and underdelivered. Talked about revolutionizing the energy industry, but they just didn't have the tech to back it up.
They also had some pretty bad timing, right? Entering the market right when the global economy was taking a dive.
Oh yeah, terrible timing, a perfect storm of bad luck, you could say. And a lot of them, they just didn't have good distribution strategies. They made great products, but they didn't know how to actually get them out to the people who needed them.
And didn't they become overly reliant on government subsidies too?
Yep, and that made them super vulnerable to those changes in policy. If the subsidies went away, their whole business model could collapse. Thiel says the clean tech bubble is a great example of what he calls indefinite optimism.
Oh, yeah. Indefinite optimism. I remember that. Can you remind me what that is again?
It's that belief that the future is going to be better, but with no real plan for how to get there, hope without a strategy.
So it's not enough to just want to save the planet, for example. You got to have a solid plan, a realistic view of the challenges, and a clear path to, making it all work financially. Otherwise, even the best intentions, they can lead to failure.
Powerful stuff. And it applies to a lot more than just clean tech.
Now, okay, we've talked about a lot here, from competition to progress, secrets, company culture, all that. But one thing that stuck with me is this idea of monopolies. Thiel says successful businesses, they often become monopolies. It's one of those ideas that kind of makes you go, wait, is that right?
It's definitely one of his most, how do you say, provocative ideas. But when you look closer, it's not that he's saying go out and be a ruthless, law-breaking monopolist. He's just observing that companies that make something truly exceptional, something valuable, they often end up with no real competition.
Like Google, they've dominated search for years because their product's just better than anything else out there.
Exactly. And Thiel, he argues that competition, it can actually hurt innovation. When companies are always fighting for market share, they get obsessed with those tiny improvements, those price wars.
They're so busy trying to beat the other guy that they miss the bigger picture.
You got it. So instead of trying to be a little bit better, aim for something so radically different, so valuable that you're in a category all by yourself.
Category of one, there it is again. Okay, bold idea, I like it.
Right.
But how do you actually build a monopoly? Is there a step-by-step guide?
Thiel, he lays out a few key things. First, start small. Don't try to be everything for everyone right away. Find a niche, a specific group of people with a specific need that you can solve better than anyone else.
Dominate that niche, then start branching out.
Exactly. It's like build a solid foundation, then start adding floors to your skyscraper.
And that's where understanding the power law comes in, right?
Hmm.
You got to be able to spot those niches that have the potential to become something huge.
You got to see those opportunities that others are missing, those hidden gems waiting to be polished.
Okay, focus, dominate, then expand. What else?
Avoid disruption. He says, in a lot of cases, it's better to create something new than to try and take down a giant, the company that's already dominating.
Yeah, I can see how that would be tempting, especially for like a young, ambitious entrepreneur. It's the whole David and Goliath thing, right?
Yeah.
Everyone loves to root for the underdog. But Thiel, he says, that's often a distraction. You're wasting energy.
Exactly. True innovation, he says, it comes from making something new, not just trying to knock off the champ. Find that blue ocean, that open space where you can thrive.
Okay, I'm really starting to get Thiel's whole approach. He's a contrarian thinker, that's for sure. Makes you look at the world in a whole new way. Embrace those unconventional ideas.
And that's what makes him so fascinating, so influential. He doesn't just accept the status quo, he pushes the limits of what's possible. Now, before we move on, I want to bring up something we talked about earlier, secrets. Thiel talks a lot about uncovering secrets, how they're key to building a successful business. But what does that really mean? How do you find these secrets, and what kind of secrets are we actually talking about?
Yeah, it's a bit like searching for buried treasure, right? Not always clear where to look or even what you're looking for, but the reward could be enormous. So let's talk about those secrets. What are they? How do you find them?
Thiel, he says there are these two main types of secrets. You've got your natural secrets and then your human secrets. Natural secrets, those are the things we don't understand yet about the world, right? Like the laws of physics or how the human brain really works. I mean, we've come a long way, but there's still so much we just don't know.
Yeah, those natural secrets feel almost, I don't know, reserved for like those brilliant scientists and researchers.
Right.
But those human secrets, those feel a bit more, I don't know, like something we could all potentially stumble upon if we're paying attention.
You're right. They do feel a bit more, well, within reach, Human secrets, there are things people don't fully understand about themselves, about how they behave, what they need, or even things they're deliberately keeping hidden. Think about those early days of companies like Airbnb, Uber, for example.
Okay, yeah.
They tapped into those human secrets, right? They saw these underutilized resources, these needs that no one else was really paying attention to.
Like Airbnb, they realized that people had these extra rooms, apartments that could be rented out. And Uber, they connected people needing rides with drivers who had empty seats in their cars. They took something that was already there, but it was just like hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. They unlocked that human secret and boom, it changed everything.
That makes sense. But how do you actually find these secrets, both the natural and the human ones? Is it just like pure luck, or is there a more, I don't know, deliberate way to go about it?
Well, Thiel, he suggests asking what he calls contrarian questions.
Contrarian questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to challenge those assumptions everyone just takes for granted, right?
Like the stuff no one even thinks about anymore. It's just like that's how it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look for those cracks in the conventional wisdom.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what are people not allowed to talk about? What's taboo? What's right there, obvious for everyone to see, but somehow they're just missing it.
So be a rebel. Question everything.
That's the spirit. Don't be afraid to explore those fields everyone else is ignoring. Areas that have tons of potential, but for some reason, nobody's paying attention to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Remember what Thiel said about the power law? A small number of things, they usually end up creating most of the value, right? So if you can find those overlooked areas, those hidden gems, well, you might just be onto something really big.
Find those diamonds in the rough. Now, let's say you actually do find a secret, something you really believe could change things. The question then is, do you share it with everyone? Or do you keep it quiet? Protect it?
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to tell everyone, make a splash, maybe even make the world a better place by sharing this incredible discovery. But then there's that other voice, the one that says, no, hold on, protect this. This is valuable. This could be like the foundation for some amazing.
It is a tough call. Thiel, he acknowledges that. It's this balance between, doing good and being practical. He says some secrets are more risky to share than others, so it really depends. But he also says it's important to build a company culture that values secrecy, being discreet.
So you got to surround yourself with people you can trust, people who understand the mission, people who know how to keep things quiet, create an environment where, sensitive information is treated with respect, with care.
A team you can trust, a team that gets it. Now, let's go back to something we touched on earlier, building that strong company culture. Thiel really seems to believe that this is like one of the most, well, maybe the most crucial element for success, and I'm starting to get why.
He says the company's culture is its defining characteristic, like its DNA.
It's what sets it apart, what makes it unique, what ultimately decides whether it'll sink or swim.
He makes this comparison, it's kind of provocative, between a high-performing team and, well, a cult. But there's a really important distinction there.
Oh, I remember reading that. I was like, wait a minute, a cult? Isn't that going a bit far? But then as I kept reading, I understood what he meant. He's not talking about those, dangerous, manipulative cults, the kind you hear horror stories about. He's using it as an analogy to show just how powerful that sense of dedication, shared belief, unwavering commitment can be. It's that kind of stuff that can propel a startup to do incredible things.
Yeah, it's like those really successful startups, they often have this incredibly strong sense of mission. Like a cult, they have a tight-knit community, a willingness to go against the grain, challenge norms.
Yeah, but here's the crucial difference. Cults, they're usually fanatically devoted to something that's fundamentally wrong, right?
Right.
Successful startups, they're fanatically right about something that everyone else is missing.
They've found that truth, that secret, an opportunity, something that no one else sees.
And they're willing to put in the work together, often against all odds, to bring that vision to life.
I'm starting to see how that, I don't even know what to call it, that cult-like mentality, but in the right context, can be a real asset.
Yeah.
But it can't just be about blind faith, right?
Yeah.
You need structure, processes, the right people. Got to channel that energy and make it productive.
Absolutely. Thiel, he talks about how important it is to pay attention to things like hiring, onboarding, team dynamics, You can't just throw a bunch of talented people together and hope for the best. You have to create an environment where they can actually work well together, communicate, share a common goal.
Yeah. He says, hire people who aren't just skilled, but they also fit in with the company's values. He calls them, what was it? Oh, yeah, conspirators. People who are really, truly passionate about the mission and ready to roll up their sleeves and build something great together.
Exactly. And he's a big proponent of being transparent, having open communication. He thinks the best way to build that strong culture is to be really upfront about the company's goals, make sure everyone understands why their work matters, and create a sense of ownership within the team.
So it's not just, here's your task list, go do it. It's more like, here's how your work fits into everything. Here's how you're making a real difference.
You got it. It's about empowering people to actually own their work, make them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into 0 to 1, I wanted to touch on something Thiel talks about towards the end, his vision of the future. He lays out 4 different scenarios: recurrent collapse, gradual convergence, extinction, and then accelerating takeoff.
It's like he's peering into a crystal ball, trying to see where humanity is headed. It's pretty fascinating and a little bit unnerving, too.
A little bit of both, right? He paints these really vivid pictures of what the world could look like depending on which path we choose.
Okay, so let's break those scenarios down a bit. What does he mean by recurrent collapse?
Recurrent collapse, it's this idea that we're stuck in this cycle of progress and decline, you know? Civilizations, they rise up, flourish, and then eventually they fall apart. Then we rebuild, and the cycle starts all over again. We've seen it throughout history, time and time again.
Kind of a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, are we just doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past?
It is a bit heavy, but Thiel, he doesn't think that's the most likely scenario, at least not on a global scale. He says with everything so interconnected now, all our technology, any kind of major collapse, it would be catastrophic. Could even lead to,
Extinction.
yeah. He doesn't think we'll just hit the reset button and start over. What about gradual convergence? What do you think about that one?
Gradual convergence, it sounds like, well, things slowly moving towards a state of, I don't know, stability, sameness maybe. Nations become more connected, borders become less important, cultures blend together. Everyone kind of becomes, well, more or less the same.
Yeah, it's like a world without conflict. Everyone's at peace. Everything's harmonious, but I don't know, maybe a little boring too.
Yeah, you lose some of that uniqueness, that diversity, right? And then there's extinction. The idea that something, a natural disaster, a pandemic, or even, something we create, wipes us all out.
That one's definitely a bit, well, bleak.
Yeah, but thankfully, Thiel doesn't seem to think extinction is very likely, at least not anytime soon.
He thinks all the knowledge, all the tech we've built up, it's too widespread to just disappear easily. It would take something truly massive to completely wipe us out.
Okay, so that leaves us with accelerating takeoff. What's that all about?
Accelerating takeoff, it's this vision of rapid technological advancement, big societal transformations. It's like, imagine unlocking all the secrets of the universe, solving all the world's biggest problems, creating a world of abundance. Very optimistic.
Thiel seems to believe we're right on the edge of this massive technological revolution, one that'll change everything about how we live, how we work, how we interact with the world.
He's definitely an optimist, but he also says this kind of future, it won't just happen by itself. We got to shift our thinking. Go from what he calls indefinite optimism to definite optimism.
Right, so it's not enough to just hope for a better future. You got to actually work to make it happen.
Exactly. And Thiel, he thinks the key to creating this kind of future is through innovation, creating new technologies, new businesses, new ways of thinking, things that actually solve problems, create value.
It's about embracing that 0 to 1 mindset, that willingness to create something new, something from scratch, instead of just copying or making small improvements on what's already there.
And he says this kind of progress, it's driven by founders, those individuals who have the vision, the courage, the determination to build the future they want to see.
So 0 to 1, it's not just a business book, right? It's a call to action, a challenge to all of us to think bigger, be bolder, and embrace the possibilities of what's to come.
And to realize that we all have the potential to be those founders, to create something new, to make a difference.
Powerful stuff. I think that's a great place to, well, kind of take a step back and reflect on everything we've talked about. Thiel's book, it's packed with ideas that really challenge how you think. And what I find really interesting is how a lot of his ideas, they seem to contradict each other on the surface,
It's true, he makes you think. And that's what makes it so valuable, right? Makes you question assumptions, look at things from a different angle. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into 0 to 1 completely, we wanted to give you a nice little summary of the key takeaways. It's a dense book, lots to think about, so revisiting those core principles can be really helpful.
I think that's a great idea. I know I could use a refresher.
Okay, so here are 10 key takeaways from 0 to 1.
Number one, progress comes in two forms. Horizontal, which is basically copying, and vertical, which is creating something truly new. Focus on building something innovative, something that takes the world from 0 to 1.
Number 2, those really successful businesses, they often become monopolies. And that's because they offer something unique, something so valuable that no one else can copy.
Number three, competition. It can actually be destructive, leading to everyone just focusing on tiny improvements and price wars, which ultimately destroys profits and stifles real innovation. Build a business that's truly different, that stands apart.
Number 4, to build a monopoly, you got to start small. Dominate a niche market, then gradually expand from there as you gain more experience and traction.
Number five, that power law. It tells us that a small number of companies or investments, they end up creating most of the value. So focus on those few things that truly matter.
Number 6, secrets, they're hidden in plain sight. Find them by asking those contrarian questions, challenging conventional wisdom, and really looking for the things that everyone else is missing.
Number seven, strong company cultures. They're built on shared values, a sense of mission, and genuine connections between people. Create an environment where people feel appreciated, respected, and they're empowered to do their best.
Number 8, sales, it's essential. Even if it's not always seen as, glamorous or whatever, having a good distribution strategy is key to building a successful business. Learn how to persuade people. Tell a story that resonates.
Number nine, computers. They're tools. They're here to help us, not replace us. The most valuable businesses of the future, they'll be the ones that leverage the strengths of both humans and machines.
And finally, number 10, the future isn't set in stone, it's something we create. It's through our actions, through our thinking, that we shape the future. Embrace that definite optimism and get out there and build the world you want to see.
Well, I hope our deep dive into 0 to 1 has inspired you to think differently about startups, about business, about the possibilities out there.
It's a fascinating book, full of those aha moments. So keep exploring, keep learning, keep building that future you want to see. And remember,
Always strive to go from 0 to 1.